Welcome to the Healing Intimacy Interviews. My name is Mia Renwall, and with me today is Susan Campbell, who is a trained sex therapist and a relationship coach with a PhD in clinical psychology, and she's also the author of the amazing books Getting Real, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, and her newest book, From Trigger to Tranquil. Warmly welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Mia.
It's so good to see you again. It's been a while since the 6-week coaching training I did with you a while back. It was amazing and I learned so much from you.
Oh,
And just to
thanks.
clear the appreciations to begin with, I so appreciate your work and I appreciate all that you do. So, yeah, I'm very honored to have you here today. Hmm. So, what is intimacy for you?
Well, I've always defined intimacy as to know and be known. And what that involves is increasing levels, because there's different levels of intimacy. So, increasing levels of willingness to reveal what's going on inside of me, and increasing levels of openness to hear what's going on, feelings, thoughts, sensations, wants, all that kind of stuff, anger, anything from others. So openness to what's coming at me and a freedom about expressing what's in me. So of course there's degrees of that, and people have so much fear of intimacy. Always have, really. It's part of the human condition because of our conditioning, which conditions us to be protective rather than open. But my work is all about helping us get free from all our automatic patterns and our automatic protections and join the flow of life. Doesn't that sound like fun, folks?
Oh, yes, I'm
Get back
right
in
there
the
with you.
flow. It really is a lot more satisfying than being protected all the time.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And it is those fears that we've learned from childhood mostly. There are childhood traumas, there might be triggers coming up, so we want to hide, we want to pretend, we want to avoid that to all costs, as you said. And one thing we really want to avoid is conflicts, of course. So we're trying to tiptoe around each other. Um, in your work, personally, and also like with your clients, what would you say causes most conflicts for people?
Well, let's face it, we all grew up a little bit differently. We have, uh, even though our sort of basic needs to feel loved and respected, to feel competent, those basic needs are similar among humans. Our strategies for getting those needs met have been very individual depending on your family of origin. So some people learned to like run and hide when there was a conflict, and other people learned the only way I'm going to get my needs met is if I scream and holler and so forth. So um, I guess the basic cause of conflict is the fact that we're all different, and we have this kind of naive at first expectation that if that person does that, well, if I did that, it would mean this. And actually, when the other person does that, like the other person runs and hides when there's you make a want or a request, and the other person seems to shut down. So you're the kind of person that, well, gee, if somebody makes a request, I'm right on it. And when you make a request of your partner, let's say, they're not on it at all. They seem to be defensive and just move away energetically. So you interpret that as they don't love me, because the way I show love is I show up. But the thing is, a lot of people have all kinds of protection patterns. And when you show up, you think you're showing up by being transparent with your needs and vulnerable and all that. They think they haven't done a good job meeting your needs, she wouldn't be asking for anything from me if I was doing a good job. So that's when we get into the realm of triggering, like making your partner's behavior that's kind of unexpected or different from yours mean that you're either not loved, not respected, not wanted, that sort of thing. So we misinterpret the signals coming from others because we expect their signals to be just like ours. And that's an extremely naive assumption. And eventually most people learn that that's a naive assumption somewhere around age 50. It takes so long.
It takes a while, yeah. Yeah, we're all so consumed with ourselves and our own worldview, and then
Yeah.
just diving into the worldview of another being is sometimes a curious
Yeah.
case, or
And
like
yeah.
very very interesting. And
And
if
the
you
reason we misinterpret is a lot because of childhood unfinished business and unhealed wounds. So we could say that not having your basic needs met as you were developing, so they call that developmental trauma, having that be part of your history is the more deep cause of relationship conflicts. So we really all need to get in gear here and help each other heal.
exactly. So when there is a conflict in a relationship, with your years of experience, what do you find works best in those situations? I've been listening to your book, From Trigger to Tranquil, and there's good tips in there. So now if you have something to give to us, please share.
Well, some conflicts are like irreconcilable differences, like she wants to have a baby, they're married and she wants to have a baby and he doesn't. And that's a kind of conflict where what people really need to do is start listening to each other and really holding that difference. So there's a skill in the book Getting Real that I call holding differences. And what that means is I really want my needs to be met. Like, I'm not ready to be a parent, and I really want your needs to be met. That's really part of your script and your vision for your life. So I want you to have what you want. I want me to have what I want. And this is a painful thing to hold because we care about each other. So learning to listen and be with the feelings that come up when you're hearing a point of view or a set of wants that are quite different from your own, that's a huge skill. And most people cannot do that. So anytime there's any kind of a difference, even if it's not one of those, I call those honest differences, even if it's more like one of those misinterpretation differences, like I asked something specific in sex for what I wanted, because boy, that's the way I like it. I want you to tell me what you want. And you shut down around that. That would be not an honest difference. That's a difference based on triggering and you bringing your old wounding into the present moment. So, but all differences, even the honest differences, tend to be triggering when you're in one of these really important relationships where you kind of depend on the other person, because any difference kind of threatens the bond. There really is difficulty. There's difficulty between the two of you. It's not harmonious. And it can put us into, and most of the time does, into kind of a separation mindset. Either you're going to get your needs met or I'm going to get my needs met. We're going to do it your way or my way. You're right or I'm right. All of that either or kind of thinking, it triggering throws us back into a more regressed place in ourselves, which is kind of competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the holding differences thing, once people can really learn how to do that, it pops us into a higher state where we're always looking at the we, like everything I do affects you and everything you do affects me. And when we get to that we consciousness, I'll give you an example here. I had a jealous husband, and during the early stages, I used to think that was ridiculous because I was really into him, but he would, after a social event, he would say, I saw you flirting with that young guy, and and I would deny it and think, that's ridiculous, get over it. And that was like the early stage before I learned how to hold differences. But as we evolved through our relationship, we got to the place where I called it a we system. We got to a place where I understood that he had that insecurity. So if I was going to be late getting home, I would make sure I called him. Or if there was a party and I was with other people, guys or something, I would make sure to include him. And it was just out of generosity. But see, in the beginning, couples go through stages. I also wrote a book called The Couple's Journey back in 1980, which talked about how you grow emotionally and spiritually, like from that me first, you're an idiot for being jealous, that was the early stage, to say, well, he's got some wounds and he needs some help. I'm going to throw him a lifeline. I'm not going to stay in that. So once you kind of go through the different stages and learn how to listen and hold differences and work with your triggers, you really can get to that place where he's still jealous. I still flirt, but I also do some things that really take care of him. And so, there's evolution as we go through working out our differences. Now, from reading the book From Triggered to Tranquil, that the most important thing that I think couples need to do is view relationship as a practice. In other words, you're not always going to get your needs met immediately. You're going to get your buttons pushed. And the idea that we could actually admit that we have these triggers, these old wounds, abandonment, rejection, I'm not good enough, my needs don't matter. These statements are the statements that come from the fear-based part of the person, but they deserve our compassion and tenderness because there really were things that happened when we were little that gave us the impression that my voice doesn't matter, somebody dominating us, or that I'm not lovable because, dad left and he never came back, things that had nothing to do with me, but they leave these scars. And so admitting, I guess the very best, deepest practice is to start by admitting that we have these wounds. And then we won't be so protective and defensive about my partner decide to go on a business trip instead of spending the weekend with me. I'm not going to interpret that as daddy left, he's never coming back, I'm not important to him. I'm not going to go there. Once I learn a little bit more about, that's where my mind tends to go when I have this sinking feeling of panic, can't get a breath. We do have like survival reactions when people do things like go on a business trip and leave me home, that type of thing. We have those, or the person doesn't call when they say they're going to call. We actually go into that regressed fight, flight, freeze place, which simply indicates that there's some old wounding that needs to be tended to. And so, the other part of the relationship practice, once you admit that you have triggers, is being able to go, there it is again. I know this place now. If you do it enough, you go, I know this place. I know that mind chatter that tells me that I'm not loved or lovable. That's my conditioning. Let me feel into where that might come from. oh, a memory is coming up of how horrible it felt when the first vacation that we had, like without daddy. I'm just making up one case story, uh, wow, and I felt so empty. And when he goes on a business trip, that's that same empty feeling. So I begin to get more aware of the tender, wounded parts of myself. And I teach people how to bring the good mother archetype in at that point. The part that says, oh, honey, your feelings are valid. I understand. I have empathy for your feelings. That's okay to feel hurt, like that kind of thing. So if we can treat ourselves with compassion, there's real healing there. Because
Hmm.
the reason we're so defensive and unnecessarily aggressive at times in our relationships is energy got stuck way back in the past. But when you start to feel the wound and the tenderness for that wounded part of yourself, it moves the energy. You cry, you might yell, do different things that move the energy. And that's how healing occurs.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. So accepting yourself with your triggers, accepting the differences in the other, and just holding that in nurturing love and care. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Hmm.
teach these practices like pause, like first know your early warning signs that you're getting triggered, like I'm feeling that panic in my chest, or I feel like I want to run out of the room. So those are early warning signs. Then pausing to really go inside, and then feeling the feelings long enough to see if there's some old memories or some familiar sensations. They might not be memories, but oh God, that hollow feeling. I know I've had that a lot of times in my life. And it's usually has to do with my significant relationship. And it's usually when I feel them moving away from me. So that would be the fear of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a little bit of language. It helps to have language for these things, because then you can notice them more easily. You can go, oh, there that is again. And then you can calm yourself and get back into a self-nurturing, self-accepting place. And then you're present again. The whole idea is all of these tools that I teach in Getting Real and From Triggered to Tranquil have to do with working with what's intruding from the past, giving it what it needs, giving it a little love and tenderness, and then saying, okay, honey, that's beautiful. I'm with you. Now, here I am back with my partner, and I've got to talk to my partner about why I yelled or why I walked out of the room. And that's called the repair step in From Triggered to Tranquil. There's a number of steps. Pause,
Mm.
self-calm, inquire into the early origins, and then come back and actually talk about what happened. If it's an interpersonal situation, and if you did something that you can identify as a trigger reaction.
Exactly. I love the reassuring part where you repair and you reassure the other person that, hey, I'm still here. I love
Yeah,
you. You know, if I could have done things differently, just explaining like, hey, I got triggered. This is how I made myself triggered, and then
mhm.
reassuring the other that I'm still here. And that's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
We always have to come back if we've done something that's going to damage the harmony and the trust. We've acted out from our trigger place, and that's forgivable. I think we all do that from time to time. We need to be able to then be humble enough to say, yes, I was triggered. I didn't even mean that. I mean, that was my reptile brain acting up, or that was that part of me that always jumps to the conclusion that you're trying to control me, or that you don't love me, or that I didn't do it right. You get to know those familiar painful voices in yourself.
And then at some point they become like friends. They're like, "Hi. Oh, there you are again.
Yeah,
Hello. Okay. All
yeah,
right. What have
exactly.
you got to say to me today?" and then you go forward from there. Yeah.
Once you can really accept that these tender parts are going to crop up, and they just need your loving attention for a bit. It's not going to take all day to process a trigger if you put your attention on your own feelings. What most people do after a fight is, they might separate because, hey, I'm out of here, I can't deal with this. And then they run through in their mind why the partner was wrong and they were right, or they run through why that shouldn't have happened. If only they would have done what I always tell them to do. If they only would have made an I statement instead of a you statement, then I wouldn't have been triggered.
That's a
All of
familiar one.
all that stuff kind of goes on, and it's kind of a worthless exercise. What will help you repair, get ready for repair, is feeling all the feelings that came up.
And allowing that grief also. If there's grief from the
Yeah.
childhood experiences, to just allow that feeling to come up and hold it in presence. Yeah.
When you've done enough trigger work, you realize that there's a lot of grief in most of us for what we did not get.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a little part of me got starved, and I'm trying to bring that part of me back into myself now and feed it
Exactly.
feed it something nourishing.
Yeah, and it's so vulnerable to ask that from our partner as well. Like, go like, hey, I would really need you to hold me now. I feel vulnerable and scared. Like, as adults, can we allow ourselves also to go there? And I have to say that in my own experience, like, it does get easier. So for those of you out there listening who might be at the beginning of your journey with this and feeling very overwhelmed and very dysregulated when these conflicts happen, I have to say, like, with my years of experience, it does get easier. So then the dips down to these uncomfortable places where the grief comes up, every single time you cry a little bit more, it gets easier and they get shorter. And the dissociation or the dysregulation gets shorter as well. So I just want to reassure you there watching that it gets
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, and what we generally are able to do after we've done enough of these repairs, where we actually have to formally say, my fear of abandonment got triggered, you didn't deserve that. What I really needed at that time was reassurance that I am loved. After a while, after you've done enough of those kind of formal repairs, because I've got it scripted in the book, so you don't go into justifying and explaining, you eventually can just say, wait, I'm having that feeling. I think I need a little reassurance from my partner. Instead of going through your whole trigger reaction, you just drop right into the need for a hug, or, hey, are we okay? Because so many people will create an opportunity for a fight, when what would do the job, once they learned how to do this, is a simple request for reassurance that we're okay, or that I'm still your girl, or whatever, however you say it. But find that soft place to ask from.
That's beautiful. What would you say is the most important step to heal your attachment wounds and form safer, more connected relationships in life? What are the biggest? I imagine acceptance is
The
a big
biggest.
one. Yeah, that's
Acceptance is the hardest for people.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just say a little bit about that, and then maybe we can go to the other things that are important. But people can read a book, or they can hear a podcast or interview like this, and they can get the idea and say, oh yeah, I know most everybody gets triggered. But when it really gets down to it, when they're in a trigger situation, there's still this tendency to want to make it about the other person. And that's a lack of acceptance that I have this tender place. Maybe all my partner said was, no, I don't want to do that right now. Or I need some quiet right now. I don't want to talk, marks a boundary in some way. That in and of itself isn't necessarily hurtful, but if we are able to just admit that, well, it hurt me, even though it shouldn't have hurt me. Logical. And so most of the time people try to act the way they should act, act grown up. But once you can really admit, there was nothing, that's actually absolutely nothing that I can find fault with about what that other person did, but I'm still triggered. And having self-compassion eventually leads to a little bit of humor, like right now, I'm actually kind of laughing at that part that's in me and in a lot of people, but laughing with affection. So acceptance, though, is really, really hard. There's this tendency to want to see yourself as good. The other thing that really is hard is to have a difference and a conflict that separates, trusting that you'll get through it. So the way I say it is, it's very important to let your partner be unhappy with you. Most of us cannot stand it. So that's again a little shortcut to having a harmonious relationship, is being able to trust that we'll get through this. And sometimes I recommend, like in the 5-minute relationship repair book, I recommend that if there is triggering in the space between you and an intimate partner, if either one of you can say, I think we need to pause, and because I do recommend people take a little space to go inward. But if somebody can say, I know we'll get through this, or if a little touch, because I know you do a lot of work with touch. Sometimes touch, for many of us at least, soothes that agitated nervous system. So know what your partner's love language is, but if touch is available to you when you're triggered, that can really make things go quicker in terms of the whole process.
I love that. Yeah, I imagine just being aware in that moment, and if one person can be the first one saying, like, hey, I'm still here, I'm angry
Yeah.
at you, and
Mhm.
I love you. You don't have to change in order for me to love you. Even if
Yeah.
you're angry, even if you're sad, even if you're frustrated with me, even if I did something wrong
Mhm.
that you would see in the moment that felt uncomfortable, we can still feel connected. And yeah, also just asking for that reassurance physically, like, I know I'm still angry, and I would still want to come and snuggle in your armpit or hold your hand. Can you hold my hand while we are going through this together? We'll get through this. I love that phrase. I love that
Mhm.
phrase. Yeah.
And that, these practices, Mia, they help an individual learn to hold a bigger charge in life, to hold more discrepancy between what I wish for and what I have, or between your wants and my wants. I mean, these things do create internal distress and stress. But as you grow in your using these practices, you are more relaxed about differences, and you really can go, yeah, we've been through this a lot of times, or my partner just made a snarky remark, but I know it's just coming from their trigger. I'm not going to jump on it and go, what did you mean by that? I mean, after a while you learn, okay, I mean, like in my partner, in this case, here and now with me, my partner will say something every now and then that, I know is just sort of, I call it anger dribbling out the side of your mouth. It's not direct, but what do I need to jump on it? If I was more, when I was younger, a little more fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, I might have gone, what was that? Because that was like a sign that I'm not liked, or that there's disharmony. Now, so there's some disharmony. He's going to work with that. And 99% of the time, he'll come back and apologize and redo it.
Yeah, it's so important to practice together and heal together and
Mhm.
grow together. And if you're not in a relationship right now, these workshops, the healing intimacy workshops, are a beautiful place to come
Mhm.
and practice how to eye gaze, how to hold another person's hands and stay present. Maybe be more aware of what's going on in your body while you're doing so. And facing those fears of intimacy and practicing these skills together in real life. So I will be hosting workshops and intro evenings both online and in person. So you are so warmly welcome to join us in this community where we can heal intimacy one relationship at a time. I appreciate you so much, Susan, for being here with me today. And these are so big topics for many of us, figuring out how to create safer relationships and be more happy and authentic and joyous in our lives.
I salute you for what you're doing, Mia. I think people really need this work.
I appreciate you for saying that, and I really love your work as well. And check out Susan's coaching and her website. I will link it somewhere here around the video. So please read Susan's books. They're amazing. I've learned so much. And check out also her awesome coach trainings. Have a beautiful evening, you all, and see you in the next video.